Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all here. Welcome to today's webinar organized by Chennai International Center. We see that people are still joining in. We will start the session soon with a welcome address by Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan, trustee and program host for today. Over to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you, Vanita. Let me, on behalf of the Chennai International Center, welcome all the participants to this program. As the participants keep joining in, let me finish the introduction of the panel members today. Let me first of all welcome Harish Mehta, Chris Gopalakrishnan, Keshav Murugesh, and Professor Mahesh Panchkula from IIT Madras to this program. They constitute the panel. A quick and brief introduction about all of them. First of all, about Harish Mehta, who is going to be the moderator. He'll moderate the session. He is the founder of NASSCOM, and he continues to guide NASSCOM in all its interactions with industry, with the government, and on NASSCOM's strategy. He was one of the early members who worked with Devang Mehta and coined the four-word phrase, Roti, Kapada, Makan, and Bandwidth. This is 30 years ago. That is the foresight that NASSCOM had and some of the leaders have. And today, bandwidth is the most priced commodity and probably the most used commodity in the country, thanks to the lockdown that we are all experiencing. Welcome, Harish. We next have Professor Mahesh Panchkula from IIT Madras. He's the Dean, the Professor of Applied Mechanics. He's also in charge of Alumni Relations and Corporate Relations, a very passionate member. IIT Madras is known for taking higher education online, one of the earliest to do so. NPTEL program from IIT Madras is very famous, and they haven't stopped there. IIT Madras has launched a number of initiatives in taking higher education to the masses through the online programs. But a special mention has to be made of the work that Mahesh does with young entrepreneurially minded students. IIT Madras Research Park is something that is known to most people as an incubator, but Mahesh runs a pre-incubator called Nirman, where he catches students really early, very, very early, whether they are in the first year of IIT or the second year, and encourages them to put their ideas to paper and start some work, arranges the funding for them, and passionately gets people from outside, including alumni, to work with them so that these ideas can germinate and graduate into the incubator. He's made a significant impact in the field of entrepreneurship, and many of them are impacting or working on social causes. Welcome, Mahesh. We next have Keshav Murugesh, CEO of WNS, one of the very large and a very reputed IT and ITES company, a services company. It's a multi-billion-dollar valued company, very passionately built, and he has given employment to so many people, taken work to some of the remote areas. He's got offices in Nashik, in Vizag, and remote places. This is again a great opportunity for taking work to some of the remote places. I'll give you one example of what there is on Dr. Sridhar Mitta, who's also a veteran of the IT industry. He's running a company called Next Wealth, and he's set up centers in the remotest part of the country. Wherever there is a group of students who are interested, whether it's 5 people or 10 people, he likes to set up a center. Because if you're going to work from home, his idea is the home doesn't have to be in the metros. It doesn't have to be in tier 2, tier 3 cities. The work from home, workplace can be home wherever the home is. That's the passion which he has developed, and Keshav is doing something similar. He recently launched a Cyber Smart portal, which is out of the WNS Foundation. I hope we'll get a chance to talk about it as part of this panel discussion. And finally, Chris Gopalakrishnan and Mahesh, they've been doing a lot of work together in IIT. And Chris has been focusing on, I'll forget about the technology work that he has been doing in the earlier part of his career. It's more in the area of brain research. Brain research is what has consumed him, and that's consuming a lot of his time. But of course, he contributes to a lot of national causes. He has been an advisor to the government of India. He has seen programs like the Aadhaar program the banking for the unbanked, GST, UPI, income tax computerization, IRCTC, so many of these systems where technology has been taken to the masses, supervised, they've gone through his critical eyes. Welcome, Chris, and I hope you have a fantastic session. People are looking forward to, in the current context, what technology can do. And the final point I have to mention is about F.C. Kohli, who always felt that technology can solve all the problems. Any problem, whether it's agriculture, education, you take a problem, you look at a way of solving it by technology. 35 years back, he brought computers to adult literacy. Adult literacy program for the first time happened in computers, and today it's one of the large programs where, in addition to India, one or two African countries are also using it. It's a program that's running in 9 or 10 languages, driven on mobile devices, iPads, and everything. Adult literacy is one of the biggest social causes that technology has impacted. With those few words, over to you, Harish. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Friends, Lakshmi again, he has been one of the greatest supporter of NASSCOM or the industry. He and his company both have been proactively involved in solving industry issues. So thank you, Lakshmi. I would like to thank the Chennai International Center for having me here. I also would like to thank, before we start, is the COVID-19 warriors. Because of their unstinted work, we all have a pleasure of having this webinar. Now, the subject for today is solving social issues using digital technologies. India had a per capita of $2,000. We have a long way to go, and we have thousands of problems, and we believe that technology will be the major enabler in solving these problems. And we have a great panel to discuss this. Such leading lights. Welcome, Krish. Welcome, Keshav. Welcome, Mahesh. Great to have you all here. For the last few years, as an industry, we have seen, I would say, exponential technology wave, and that is changing the way the business is happening, or it was changing the way the business models were changing. And then the pandemic happened. And pandemic created I would think that largest ever change in human behavior, and that too at scale and almost instantaneously. And 6 billion people came to a halt, and that impact of technology has been massive. And as we all know, like children, for example, who have access to computers, get up early in the morning, dress up, and excitedly go to online school. I'm amazed to see the state departments, I would say states in the country, using online real-time dashboard to manage pandemic. To me, this was unheard of and unimaginable, let's say, just 6 months back, whether this kind of scenario would happen. So it is building a very healthy, strong digital foundation for the country. One side, managing pandemic itself is a massive challenge, but it is also an opportunity for us to reimagine India, reimagine digital India. While on one side, business is getting revolutionized. So one thought is, why not we use this radical innovative wave and take this knowledge, expertise, technology, and transform it over to solve a social problem. And we have some tough problems. So that is the subject of this panel discussion. And each panelist will pick up a subject of their passion and talk to us. So to share their views, the first speaker to come on line would be Krish. So Krish, over to you now.
Thank you to Chennai International Center for inviting me. And it's a privilege for me to actually be a panelist with this group of people, three from the IT industry, which I came from, and the fourth person from IIT Madras, my alma mater. So it's feels like a family discussion really. See, we have all known that technology is going to help us transform society. We have seen bits and pieces of this. But the big opportunity is ahead of us, and the big opportunity for India is to be the laboratory, to be the place where this transformation is going to materialize to the benefit of society. What I mean by this is, as Harish said, the per capita income is around $2,000, $2,700 at this point. And India is on its path to become a $5,000 per capita economy, a $10,000 per capita economy in the near future. We can debate whether it will happen in 5 years, 10 years, etc. But clearly, we are on the road to actually multiply our per capita income. And I'm very confident that this will happen because in 1993, the per capita income was $600. So in the last 25, 27 years, the per capita income has almost tripled or became 4 times. So we can expect in our lifetime the per capita income to increase. Now, when the per capita income increases, consumption increases, people's use of resources increases, people's use of technology increases, and that's where we need to think about the role played by technology in creating a sustainable, inclusive, and an equitable society. And that's where the social piece comes in. For example, if you linearly extrapolate the number of cars and look at how many cars India will have for providing mobility, it's a wrong way to think about it. 3% or 4% of Indians own cars today. Now, if you linearly extrapolate the fossil fuel, use of cars and extrapolate that, we will pollute ourselves to death when we reach 10% or 20%. We will not have roads to drive them, etc. So we need to reimagine mobility itself. Now, I have been working in the area of healthcare quite a bit. Lakshmi mentioned about my interest in brain and aging, etc. And I can tell you that we need to reimagine healthcare itself. So, for example, how can we provide affordable, inclusive healthcare to 1.3 billion people? Definitely, it has to be based on technology, because the last mile, even not just the last mile, but how do you bring doctors to tier 2, tier 3 cities, specialists to tier 2, tier 3 cities, specialty hospitals to tier 2, tier 3 cities. So we need to have, one, technology providing the access, and second, we need to have a business model which allows us to provide these at affordable prices. So when I look at technology, there are 2 ways it can be done. One is the specialist brings the technology to the remote areas and villages, and these are new technologies. So I will give you one example. There's a company called Niramai where I've invested in. They are into breast cancer screening using thermal imaging. The challenge with breast cancer screening is that today's process is using X-ray tomography, and it's a contact. You have to get in contact with the machine to do the X-ray and things like that, and subjects don't like to actually do that, and only 10% of women are getting tested today. 90% are not getting tested. The advantage of thermal imaging is that the subject can be behind a screen. There is no touch involved, and the results are as good as X-ray tomography, and it will become better because in the background they're using AI and ML to refine the algorithms. Second, the thermal camera is a mobile camera. It's a small camera, portable, so you can actually take it to the village. So this is an example of how technology changes how the way something is done, makes it accessible, allows people to use it, with addresses the issue of taboo and things like that. and increases the availability of this. The second is self-service application. So if you look at the COVID situation itself, telemedicine is the way in which we consult doctors today. Now, telemedicine can actually, in the future, provide ubiquitous connectivity to doctors to every part of India. So the doctor can be in Chennai or Bangalore or Mumbai, and the patient could be anywhere in India, and they can consult the doctor. But you need to now build that technology, self-service technology, such that it's available in vernacular languages, it's available using interactive voice response systems. Because many a time we can't actually address all the languages, or there are people who are not literate. So even if you provide in vernacular languages, they can't access it. So you need to actually provide these systems using interactive voice response systems and things like that. And if you build such systems, yes, it's possible. So for example, Arogya Setu application, which all of us are using today for figuring out whether we need to isolate ourselves, etc., is available in 12 languages. On the positive side, it's available in 12 languages. On the negative side, only 12 languages, right? So we need to think about how we can make these self-service applications accessible to every single Indian. It's a big challenge. The last point I want to make here is, whenever such transformation happens, we need to actually reimagine our regulatory framework also, because at scale, if you want to have social impact, we need to bring government into the loop. And when government comes into the loop, we need to make sure that the regulations are addressed. So for example, before the COVID, a prescription on a telephone, what is called an e-prescription, was not allowed. Right? And so e-pharmacies were not allowed actually to provide medicines, etc., just like e-commerce portals and things like that. But suddenly, COVID has changed this, and the government was forced to regulate, change the regulation such that e-prescriptions are allowed. So that's a positive side of COVID, even though, a wrong way to think about it. But we need to address such regulations and ensure that we keep pace with technology. Regulations keep pace with technology, and I feel that we need to think about regulators having two roles: an enabling role and an enforcing role. Today, it's weighed heavily in the enforcement side rather than enabling side. I think first you need to think about enabling. And in the enabling role, we also need to adopt things from the software industry, what is called an agile methodology. You pilot it, you test it, you learn, and you refine, go back and redo it again. And regulation has to be part of this loop, because we need to innovate, adjust the regulation, go back, learn, and redo this cycle again and again. So technology has a big role to play. India is the place to do this because we have our development ahead of us, and if we do it right, we can actually impact 1.3, 1.4 billion people positively and impact the world positively, because we will reduce pollution, we will reduce poverty, we will impact the health outcomes of 1.3 billion people, and this will be a model for this 4 to 6 billion people around the world who don't have access to good healthcare today. So I'll stop here and we will have a discussion later. Thank you.
I think before Keshav comes in, I have a question for you, Chris. So you talk about the current technologies can solve the problem, make it affordable and so and so. Now technology is known for exponential change. So these products will become cheaper, better, faster at an accelerated rate. Recently, looking at the way the government is working, the reforms in the agriculture sector or for the space sector, they are allowing private sector to come in. There is no reason that the government also will not be positive in bringing in reforms the way we would like to see in the healthcare sector. So what do you see as a challenge, number one challenge in making it widely available across the board?
So if you take healthcare specifically, healthcare is a state subject. and every state has its own way of doing things. If you just look at the COVID situation itself, every state has created its own response mechanism, its own dashboard, its own actually, Arogya Setu equivalent application. Everything is, we have 30 states, 30 ways of doing things, and there are some districts who have gone their own way. So first is the distributed nature in which we are implementing technology. And second is none of these systems talk to each other. There is no standard operating procedure. Rules and regulations are created locally and implemented locally. And when they implement it, it actually goes, even further, into a disarray. And it's a very sad situation in Chennai for keeping at least this is what the newspaper or the media reports say, for keeping a shop open for more than 5 minutes or 15 minutes, 2 people lost their lives, unfortunately and tragically, right? So the implementation of these rules and regulations are left in the hands of the people at the bottom of the hierarchy, and we have no mechanism of figuring out, which is the way to do it. And so we need to bring technology into the transaction. So everything needs to be enabled through technology so that as they take action, as they do the transaction, it's recorded and there's a log, and there are checks and balances using maybe AI and machine learning in the background, so that we know that they are actually following the regulations and not actually going overboard. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Krish. Now, our next panelist is Keshav. Keshav, we are right in the middle of the IT industry's major transition to work from home. 4.5 million engineers suddenly had to move. And so maybe, Keshav, can you share your views now?
Sure, Harish Bhai. So before I start, let me say that what an honor it is to be on a panel with all the heroes of my heroes of the tech industry, introduced by Lakshmi, Chris, yourself, and I've also met Professor Mahesh for the first time now, and also to be on a CIC panel. I respect this organization and Gopal very much. So thank you all very much for this opportunity. So first and foremost, I must start by saying that for me, I think, the potential for us leveraging technology to solve social issues includes things like improving the economy itself, creating employment in the economy, solving citizen services, ensuring that all businesses minimize handoffs, physical handoffs, and go more technology enabled, driving the model much more into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 locations, creating more diversity in terms of workplace and many other things, building more self-reliance for India overall, ensuring there are more online education models because of the experience we are now having with all of this. More importantly, ensuring that our MSME sector that has generally shied away from technology has learned the lesson from this pandemic and will now go all whole hog behind technology, so that if ever there is a next pandemic or there is a next opportunity, they will be able to leverage technology. And finally, also use this opportunity to educate youngsters who are going to access the internet by training them around cyber security and how to navigate the net safely. So for us, I will say that for India, this was really a supernova 2x or 3x moment. Nobody had ever planned for work from home as one of the key ways of delivering the technology business. And as you know, we employ 4.5 million people. We delivered 191 billion, 8.5% of India's GDP last year. And in a matter of a few hours, we actually fast forwarded the entire future into the current time frame, when we started moving 3.5 million desktops, from office to homes, without realizing or knowing how well it will all work. And I can tell you, the way the industry came together, the way we focused on what I call the trifecta, which is health and safety of the employees. The second is keeping the lights on for every client across the globe. And the third was planning all required cybersecurity kind of measures and also starting to focus on how to get the work back to the office was all happening at the same time. And while we had 3.5 hours of notice to actually do this, the reality is the government actually supported us every step of the way. And we use a lot of technology-enabled models even to create these passes. I'm sure all of you have experienced some of those e-passes and things like that. But we used all of it to move those desktops. We loosened all the controls. And then once they reached people's homes, we tightened all those controls. And what was traditionally a BCP model, I will say has now become what we call a PCP model or a pandemic planning model for the long term, because the industry has now got ready and understands this model extremely well. What is also very interesting is that this happened, this pandemic happened at the same time across the world. So our customers across the world also experienced it along with us, and therefore in their eyes, in their minds, the way India responded to this crisis is right on top. I think the branding that we probably have got from the managing this crisis is probably the best we have ever seen, across years of doing good work for them. At this point in time, I'll say we're keeping the lights on. Experience has been very good. Productivity slightly lower, but managing extremely well, and clients are very relieved, very, very happy. But what will this mean for the future? It means that work from home is now going to become a part of our delivery mechanism for this industry for the long term, right? Because it is not something that will take over work from office, but it can be blended in. It also means that our ability to now work with the government in India and also work with other governments outside to help them understand that we have experienced it well, and therefore they should now relax various laws that they relaxed temporarily in order to ensure for the long term we can take advantage of it and deliver this business in a new model is being encouraged. You are aware that through NASSCOM, we have now created a task force that is interacting directly with the government, Department of Telecom, Special Economic Zone, Ministry of Commerce. More importantly, we are working on changing very archaic labor laws. And this is very, very important, because I spoke about the fact that if you want to manage social issues, we have to create more diversity. The reality is this experience shows us that we can enable the gig economy. We can actually take this model into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 locations. If we are able to get better bandwidth and uninterrupted power and move it into the hinterland of the country, we can actually create part-time employment, and we can engage even the 120 million women in India who have a secondary education degree but who are not part of any workforce today, because they want to work a few hours a day, maybe a few days in a week. This is a very, very powerful, long-term, potential for us. The way campuses will change, I think, will now, dramatically change to hub, spoke, and edge. In the past, it was all about driving from the hub. We brought people to the work. In the future, it will be all about we taking the work to the people. It will start work from home. The edge will be work at home. But we will also create small contact centers, which will be the spokes, I think, for the longer term. Let's look at the assets we have in terms of digital assets as a country. First and foremost, we are the youngest nation in the world, and that demographic dividend is going to be available with us till 2055. So that's the big asset we have to leverage. Lots of good experiences through managing this pandemic from a technology world point of view. Lots of bad experiences also, because we found also where we did not have to depend, where the government didn't have to spend to help us, they were ready to help us, right? And we were able to do it all on our own. But wherever you need governmental spending, I think it goes through lots of other hoops. So that's something we have to watch out for in the long term. What are the opportunities? First of all, lowest age across the world. Second thing is we already have 600,000 people who are digitally enabled in this country. And over the next few years, maybe 1.5 million more will be created in this country. So real solid base to get after for solving some of these problems. And our ability to, rework education systems, I think, as well as push the startup ecosystem so that more and more people are focused on creating interesting new startups where the highest disruption takes place, and focusing them on creating jobs as opposed to looking for jobs is very, very high at this point in time. And, from my perspective, I think the experience we have seen, not just in terms of solving our client problems where we really help them with minimal, physical handoffs, can be used in every one of our businesses today. And if we enable this gig economy, if we are able to make those changes around labor laws, our ability to go after the gig economy and create, lots of new jobs in many areas is very, very high. Finally, I will say our ability to actually have people working across multiple companies, creating multiple employment for themselves, working 8-hour days, but not necessarily for one company, can also ensure that compensation levels, salary levels, as well as the component of employment itself can dramatically go up. So I'll stop here for the time being, but I actually think this is creating a big, big opportunity for us if we play it right and the governmental support is available.
Just a quick question for Keshav. Do you think the industry is saying that 25% of work will be done work from home? But many other companies are making statements saying 100% they'll go work from home. Do you see that sort of reality in the industry?
I do not see 100% happening from home because, first and foremost, we still have issues of bandwidth. We still have issues of uninterrupted power that we need. Our labor laws have to change to enable all of this. And we also have significant cybersecurity kind of issues for which clients will not sign off on a 100% work from home kind of program. So I'll stop there, but I don't think it is going to be something very powerful that can be blended in to a work from office or work from anywhere model. You can work from the smallest village of this country and still belong to a big company like Infosys. That's the opportunity of this model.
Thank you, Keshav. Our next panelist is Mahesh. One of the favorite subject or passion that he has is education. And both Krish and Keshav said, education is the foundation on which we are going to build the new India. So over to you, Mahesh.
Thank you, Harishji. It's an absolute honor to be part of this panel. This is really a blessing and an honor. Thank you very much. IIT is a great place to be a professor. It gives us the security of being in a very intellectually stimulating environment while interacting with some of the best minds from across the country. I think I want to start by giving you a very high level, broad brush view of tertiary education in India. I'm not going to talk about primary and secondary education. That's a very, very complex problem. But I want to focus on tertiary education, which I'm a little more aware of. And some of these numbers are drawn from a report called the All India Survey on Higher Education, which the government puts out every year. And the UNESCO and UNICEF also have their own versions of the report. So I'll give you a broad brush view. India is a country of about 40,000 colleges, about 1,000 universities totally, and 3.73 crore students are actually enrolled in these colleges and universities. Okay, there are about 15 lakh teachers doing their teaching, which is a ratio of about 25:1 for a large country like ours. That's actually remarkable. The AICTE's target is at 20:1. So for a whole country to be at 25:1 is very, very good. The gross enrollment ratio for the country is about 26.3%, which basically says that 26.3% of all 18 to 23-year-olds are somewhere in a college learning something, which is actually very good. I don't think we need to be shy of this number 26.3, because for a large country like ours and the way our economy is structured, we are still a very skill driven economy. So this 26.3 doesn't account for a large base of quote unquote students who are learning a skill of sorts. And that's a trait that we cannot ignore. And the satisfying aspect of this 26.3 is that this is exactly the same for both men and women in the country, which is remarkable again. Um, we only have 2.5% of these colleges that run PhD programs, and only about a third are involved in postgraduate programs. That is a matter of concern, that we do not have enough of these colleges stepping up to the advanced degrees. I think once we let students come in, graduate, they have two options. We want them to continue on in a path towards education while also being employed. I think that is one aspect of our education system that should evolve over time. The one part that really strikes where every time I read this report is this statistic. Only 4% of the colleges have an enrollment more than 3,000. If you think India is a country of Kirana stores, India is a country of small Gurukula. Tiny colleges spread all over the country. Now, that entire education system pivoted around 3 months ago and went online. That's remarkable to me. I don't know how well every college is doing. I've had a chance to interact with several hundreds of teachers from across Tamil Nadu, primarily through some of our alumni programs, and I see that they're all intending to do the right thing. But there are clearly two technology problems that come in the way of a teacher in one of these tiny colleges doing their thing. One is student bandwidth. If Harishji coined this word, several years ago, roti, kapda, makan, or bandwidth, no better time now, and nobody is more impacted than a student. In fact, when we pivoted to go online, all our faculty members, we just divided up the entire student population and called 20 students each to make sure that they had bandwidth access. They were able to download lectures and watch the material online. We found that about 100 students really were hurting for bandwidth. Most others could manage with what they had. But really manage is not the word I want to hear in the lexicon of a student doing their thing. But these 100 students really had problems. So we had to request TCS and their ION centers in their neighborhoods to open up their facilities for these students to go in and learn. So the first opportunity that I want to point out here is an opportunity. We used to have these small computer kiosks when internet was in its budding days. I think we now have an actual business opportunity to have these kiosks open up again with good fiber connectivity, a student walking in, being able to download what they need to download. Now, so this social divide is a very clear divide, and there are other aspects of this social divide as well. Chris talked about earlier about a large family cramped up into one room. We've had dozens of students ask us, how do you expect me to study when all these kids are running around in my home? Bring me back to the institute. That's a better place for me to study from my hostel. But unfortunately, we are unable to do that. So this again presents an opportunity, a quiet place, a computer kiosk. A student can pay by the hour, by the month, go in there, use internet, and quietly learn. I think this is a very, very important opportunity. The second aspect that I want to point to, as far as opportunities that arise from the current situation, Chris talked about the role of an enabler and a regulator. I completely agree with Chris in the education sector as well. We only have regulators. There are no enablers. We have NAAC, we have AICTE, and all these people are police people. We need somebody who will play the proactive role of becoming an enabler. There is an opportunity for a private sector player to step in and actually serve that purpose, but I think aided by a government policy, a broad government policy would be good. Then I want to talk about seamless teaching platforms. See, right now, when even an institution like IIT, which is blessed with resources, we use a platform called Moodle to do our learning management, Zoom and Google Meet to do our lecturing. We use Google Drive to archive our lectures and deliver them to our students. I think there is a need for a tailored learning management system that includes all of these aspects that can then be used by these tiny arts and science colleges in tier 3 and tier 4 cities. These colleges are there, they are doing their thing. They just need a good technology tool that they can easily adapt and adopt and use in their processes. I think that's what I want to call scalable towards smallness. I don't think we can go towards these large behemoth US university models. That is not what is appropriate for India. We have organically developed this large number of small college models. We need a technology tool that this landscape can embrace, use, and benefit from. The last and the biggest technology challenge, which even an IIT is not able to solve with all its resources, is evaluation and examination of students. These students are in their homes. How do I close the semester? How do I give them a letter grade? I need to conduct an exam in some sanitized atmosphere that I can then use to give a letter grade. This is very important. And a school like Cornell has a technology platform. What they do is they want the student to have the computer on, 2 mobile phones, one looking at their face, one looking at, I don't know, their environment. And then they take this exam online, and they have some AI tool that detects, I guess, a behavior that's to be avoided. But I've talked to students who've taken exams in that situation. If they just look down like that, the tool raises a red flag. Certainly, you don't want students to be under that kind of a stress, taking an exam, in a situation which is already quite stressful. So I think these are the clear opportunities. Now, in the midst of all of these challenges, I want to talk a little bit about my own COVID warriors that I've seen up front. Our student entrepreneurs. We've had, IIT Madras is home to, over 150 startups. And I've seen dozens of them, even in these very tough times, pivot around to figure out a problem that they can solve for the large masses, or take a product that they already have and figure out a technology aspect that can actually I'm sorry, there was some interruption there. So the biggest challenge, as I see, these entrepreneurs, and I want to talk a little bit about a couple of examples. I think they're worth enlisting just for the sake of understanding the energy in our youth today. There was one company that was involved in making smart bins, and they quickly figured out a way by which they can detect bio waste in a bin placed somewhere in the corner of a city. And they started developing that and working with municipalities as a way of detecting local infection rates. There was another company that made analog watches that had smarts in it. So imagine an Apple Watch, but with an analog display on it. They figured out a way to sense temperature real time, and they started marketing this product at a very low cost and getting some way by which you can sense infection rates in a large community. There's a third that I want to talk about as well, a company called Modulus Housing. They already had a product which was basically a quickly deployable space. So within a few hours, you could kind of have an 800 square foot or 1,000 square foot containerized home or containerized sanitized space in your backyard. So given this, hospitals started approaching them for doffing rooms, for areas that they can use for extensions of their COVID wards. And so these are, again, they quickly stepped up and started developing their products for these markets and selling their products as well, working with the state governments. So I want to really salute these people, because they could just as well have said, let's wait through this pandemic and figure out, when the sun rises back up again, I'll rise up again. But that's not what they did. So I think we have all a lesson to learn from these young people. And so that's the challenge. And in all this, I want to close by saying, we'll talk again about research later, but I think that's an area that we need to, education as a whole is a big social opportunity that technology can solve in a big way. Thank you, Harishji. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'll reserve my thoughts for later.
Thank you, Mahesh. But tell me, the young energy, the enthusiasm, the competence that you are seeing, how do we channel that energy, say, in solving social problems? Where do you see as a major bottleneck?
I think the first thought that comes into an entrepreneur's mind when I hear social is it profitable? I think we need to dispel that relationship. Social problem solving can be can be profitable. Nothing wrong in profiting from solving social problems. And so first, let's get that message out, right? And that you don't have to be this, I'll do a broad brush view, kurta wearing social entrepreneur who has sacrificed all. You don't have to be that. You can actually solve problems and make a good life for yourself and your employees. So that's the first thing. Second is good mentorship. I think we need to provide a layer of alumni or knowledgeable people who will come advise students on the nitty-gritty of moving along the path of entrepreneurship. I hear, when I visit colleges and talk to our students in other colleges, some of the questions I hear them ask are very elementary, things that somebody slightly more knowledgeable in their own organization should have addressed along the way. So either they didn't ask or they didn't get an answer. That's the second problem. I think if we figure these two out, we should be doing well.
Thank you, Mahesh. So now let us move on to the next segment, do some crystal ball grazing in terms of emerging trends and the opportunities. We'll start with Krish.
I believe that the COVID situation has energized the government, energized the industry, energized the entrepreneurs, energized the bureaucracy, all to work together and solve problems at speed. And I hope that this can be sustained beyond COVID, because that will benefit us significantly. See, technology is an enabler, a tool, and it has to be applied to a problem, and we have to solve the problem at scale. So, if we can actually bring all these stakeholders, all these actors together to address problems, then that's the first step. Second, we need to have a business model that has two components. I strongly believe that we need a public-private partnership that acts as a platform layer which ties everybody together and which creates some public good. And Lakshmi talked about Aadhaar, UPI, etc., which has actually changed the way we do financial services today, financial transactions today. So in the healthcare space, one of the biggest challenges in the healthcare space is that every hospital has a copy of the patient's record. They have their own IT systems. And then when you go to a doctor, they do paper and pencil. They don't have any systems. They actually share the prescription. They share their diagnostic with the patient, and they expect the patient to keep it. Some of them have a copy in their file also. So we go all the way from paper files to very proprietary systems. Now, overnight, how do we change this? And this is a classical problem of a transformation of an industry. And I believe that if we can have a platform layer which interconnects these, and there are plans and there is an architecture being built in order to do that. So, a patient can go to an app, give permission for accessing their records, and these records are in a vault, for example, and the service provider accesses this record. Now it could be a paper record which is scanned, it could be actually a digital record in a proprietary format, or it could be a set of X-rays and images and things like that, which is also part of the vault, etc. And the service provider accesses this, manipulates this, and stores it back into the vault in their own format. So the transition becomes very simple when you do this. And something like this I'm involved with now. The Swest initiative is something like this. So we need, and this is built as a public-private partnership. It's built on philanthropy. It's a not-for-profit organization, and that's how this will be built. And on top of that, all service providers can plug in. All hospitals can plug in, all physicians, doctors, clinics, laboratories, insurance providers, they can all plug in. And provide a single window to the patient or to the individual. That kind of a model has to be built if you want to transform very quickly from a legacy environment to a modern, integrated, interoperable environment which gives flexibility to the user. Now, this have many other savings also, because all the code is actually in public domain. So people can actually take this code and create the interfaces and APIs that they require. So there are many other benefits of doing something. The model is actually a very strong model for us to adopt in other areas also. For education, for example, why don't we have an integrated platform across the country? Why does every institute have its own ERP system and things like that for managing students? We need to reduce costs. We need to increase reuse. We need to look at reduction in the amount of software in the world. Today, the software layer is actually drowning all of us. It's good for IT companies because we have, next 50 years of work. Sure, it's an insurance policy actually. No, I'm not joking. We have mainframe systems and we have IoT devices on the other end, right? We integrate all this and we manage all these things, and it's a job. It's a insurance for our job. But that is what is required for us to think about how we can build through a public-private partnership. And then on top of that, entrepreneurs come in. So you have payment gateways and e-wallets, and today when I want to transfer money to, let's say, Harish, I just need your telephone number. I don't need to know what your bank is, which bank you're using, nothing. I just need your telephone number. I can transfer money. And that's the simplicity if you build this layer, platform layer. And we need to do this for all transactions. The last thing I want to mention here is government must rethink how services are delivered. Private sector has accountability. Government, unfortunately, doesn't have accountability. We can't even question them. So if today passport is being delivered in 24 hours, which was actually taking 24 months or maybe 2 months, I don't know. Yeah. It's a transformation, and TCS is doing that work. If you get, your income tax refund overnight, right, in 48 hours, that's because, Infosys is working with the income tax department to do that. So we need to rethink how public services are delivered. On the other end, on the user side, we have created these kiosks, and all the utility payments and everything is now in the private sector, right? And it has completely transformed. We are old enough to know and how difficult it was to pay electricity bill. We have to go to the electricity board department, stand in queue. They'll tell you when to come, which day to come. Then suddenly they'll say, we are not working today, so you can't pay. All kinds of issues were there. But today, we just don't worry. Just pay it using maybe a Paytm app, or now Amazon also supports payment of utility bills and things like that completely. So we need to privatize some of the government services to citizens so that we get better service levels.
But Krish, for this kind of size of the project, the funding will come from where? Will it come from private sector, government, outside India?
So public goods is built primarily based on philanthropy and volunteers, right? And the money required to build something like this is not really large because it's a one-time effort. In order to operate that, we need to create a special purpose vehicle, just like, we have stock exchanges for trading in equities and things like that. Even if you think about it, banks are what? It actually documents or captures the wealth that you have. It's a ledger of what you have, wealth you have, right? It documents that. We have created these institutions. They can be run as for-profit organizations.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So, Keshav, Chris talked about huge opportunity for IT in healthcare. So, if you do crystal ball gazing for IT industry 3 years, 5 years from now, what do you see the scenario? And what other comments you have in terms of future opportunities?
So Harish bhai, yes, actually Chris's comments gives a lot of comfort and confidence, and I thank him very much for that. But I think what has also enabled our cause is COVID-19. And let me tell you, while all of us were very focused on digital acceleration for clients before COVID-19, it is this one pandemic that automatically has enhanced the potential dramatically, because there are among clients also many naysayers. They talk a lot, but they would like to go very slowly in a very safe manner. That has changed forever now, right? So if you just look at any of the traditional businesses itself, the kind of impact we are likely to see in every business, whether it's insurance, the way technology and the acceleration of technology is going to ensure better service delivery to end customers, higher levels of personalization, self-service portals being created, IVR, chatbots, all of this kind of stuff is not only going to enhance customer experience, it's going to reduce cost dramatically. You look at retail business. This whole experience over the past few months itself, not just in India, but across the globe, if you look at the way people have leveraged technology in order to just solve their day-to-day kind of issues of ordering and fulfillment, it has created a completely new excitement in the minds of every player in the space, right? And again, you can now leverage all the good things that we spoke about in the earlier part of the discussion and the large numbers of technology savvy people we have in India and our expertise around analytics, data, things like that, to get after hyper specialization kind of models. Similarly, healthcare we spoke a lot about, but biggest opportunity, look at banking, the ability for us to completely eliminate cash and move after digital models, and at the same time involve humans is huge. So even from an external point of view, it's huge. All of it can play in extremely well in India as well. Now you look at how startups also delivered in this country, during this whole COVID thing. You look at examples of this company called Drona. This actually created maps and was able to give information to states about hotspots, right? So clearly there are companies, startup companies already starting to provide services. InstaMojo is now saying that every minute in the last few months they have added one new customer, right? Or one new provider of services. There is a company called Garuda Aero, again a startup, which has actually done sanitization projects using drones. Okay, this is the second part. Now, when we spoke about talent, we also said we are trying to work on changing the labor laws. We want to enable the gig economy. We want to take this model deeper and deeper into the country. It also creates lots of excitement, but a few challenges as well. How do you monitor such talent, right? And therefore, you're seeing companies are also already introducing HR bots, right, which can solve the day-to-day problems that these people have working in a remote, kind of basis. Appraisal systems. You're not in a position now to go to your boss and have a discussion, right? And if this pandemic continues for the next 18 months, how do you show your boss or your company you've done a better job? New models are being created. Focus will be on productivity, positivity, and impact on clients. So employees have to understand that these are going to be monitored, very, very carefully. And finally, I want to end by saying, what should the government also be doing in all of this? So first and foremost, I think government must take on board a lot of the initiatives and comments coming from industry experts on how education in this country should change. Professor Mahesh called it the e-Gurukul model. But for me, the e-Gurukul model, the teacher could be teaching millions of people in India, and in the nighttime teaching people outside. They could be moonlighting as well and making money. It can create new jobs and create more excitement. It will get the great people to go into education. So that's the first thing. Government needs to really help at this point in time build the infrastructure across India. all that we are asking for from DOT, Special SEZ, and the labor departments must be approved, because this is the biggest opportunity India is seeing. I believe creating tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 connectivity is a massive, positive. Let me tell you, at this point in time, Monster is already saying that 200,000 IT people in this country have already put their CVs out there saying COVID impacted, meaning their jobs have been COVID impacted. So 200,000 people, nobody is saying it's a job loss, but they are actually out there in the market. If you look at those profiles, you will see that many of them belong to tier 1 locations, bulk of them belong to tier 2 locations. Now, if all of this happens, the infrastructure is created, there is no issue in us taking these people back to their homes where they came from, having them work for the biggest companies from there, and work across 3 or 4 kind of jobs. Again, I think government must simplify corporate tax laws, things, the laws that we have been talking about on, startups and ESOPs and all of this stuff. And all of us together must be very, very focused on both job creation and upskilling of our talent. It is the biggest opportunity that we are having at this point in time to transform our clients' businesses, but also to take all these models and transform each area within India. So I'm again signing off saying very, very excited with the potential.
Thank you, Keshav. Thank you. Professor Mahesh, would you like to have any comments on the startups in terms of R&D, or the startups creating jobs, or startups thinking advanced, deep tech projects, solving again social issues?
I think this is again the greatest opportunity that the startup community across the country has, especially when they are aligned to like an academic ecosystem where the facilities of the academic ecosystem are accessible to them, is when deep tech startups can probably best thrive. So my first recommendation is that every engineering college should have some version of a small incubator that encourages students to come in and do something on their own. I think, but the largest opportunity that this pandemic has presented to my community, the teaching community at large, is the opportunity to teach online. Like Keshav mentioned just a minute ago, we have 3.7 crore students. Only 10% are in distance education. The Indira Gandhi National Open University kind of model. This pandemic is both a threat and an opportunity. The threat is basically from the fact that all of the foreign players have now complete access to the Indian student population. In the past, that degree granting ability was artificially regulated by the regulators, that let's say a Cornell or a Georgia Tech couldn't come in here and grant degrees in India. Whereas today, if a Georgia Tech, which by the way they're already doing, says I'm going to offer an MS computer science degree completely online, and a student says, okay, it's only half the tuition of actually going to Georgia Tech, I'll get that degree from Georgia Tech, and a company somewhere in India says, yeah, that's valuable to me, I'm going to hire you. I think this whole regulatory framework has suddenly broken down. This is a threat. Now, I don't see this as a threat. We need to make an opportunity out of it. And IIT Madras has, I can't talk about it much, but Lakshmi talked about it earlier in the introduction. We have probably the most game-changing online degree program that is in the works. It's going to be launched on 30th of June. I think every institution in India needs to step up and think of these programs that would take advantage of whatever infrastructure we already have, but starts to educate students online. Quality online education is the real need of the hour. I want to close by saying that, look, I remember browsing in 1992. There were seriously graphics intensive web pages. When the bandwidth on AOL in the US was some 42 kilobits per second, right? And why would they make this seriously graphics intensive web pages when it was so bandwidth starved? The answer is they knew that the bandwidth was coming. So I think same applies today to online education. Let's design this system for a day when 4G and 5G is completely accessible across the country, tier 3, tier 4. I think it's not far away. And education is the fastest way to get a family out of poverty. 15 years, a student goes to college, gets a job, they're no longer poor, but in the middle class. Thank you for this chance to express my thoughts.
You talked about roti, kapda, makan and bandwidth. he just reminded me that in those days when we met, I shouldn't say the name of the minister, but telecom minister, and we said we want 3 megabits of bandwidth. So he said, bandwidth kya cheez hai? So to him it was like a roti, kapda, some physical thing to be given.
Yeah,
So
you know,
there
when
we
every
have
time,
become a friend.
every time ISRO puts a satellite in space, they've created value quite literally out of thin air. You know, I think we need to do more of that.
So now I'm going to rapid fire questions, 4 or 5 questions. Lakshmi and Gopal, both of you also can join in. Your answer should be yes or no or in one word. So you can unmute your mics. When you look at technology solving problems, where are the real bottlenecks? Is it imagination? Is it science? Is it technology? Is it resource of funds? Is it people skills? Quality of data? Lack of collaboration? Poor governance? Pick your choice. Maybe we'll start with Chris.
The model that we
Only
use.
one choice there.
Model. We have to think about the right model.
Okay. Keshav?
For me, it's lack of will.
Okay. Mahesh?
I think it's lack of innovation. I mean, we've not given ourselves enough time to think out of the box.
Lakshmi?
A mindset change, not just the behavior change, a mindset change and switch to collaborative mindset.
That's okay. Gopal, are you going to chip in?
No, I'm good, Harish. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, all right. If there was a magic wand to one social issue to disappear from the country, which issue that would be?
So for me, right now, healthcare is top of my mind. That's my priority.
For me, healthcare as well.
Professor Mahesh?
I think digital literacy is something that we need. I mean, because that's the future. It's an enabler for a much brighter future.
Okay. Lakshmi?
I would say equity, availability of resources across all the people. I mean, simple thing, bandwidth. Well-endowed people have access to good education, whereas the people who do not are disadvantaged.
Okay. If you are an investor with say $100 million, which sector you will invest in? Krish?
Harish, I'm going to come back to healthcare because again, my focus today is on healthcare. And if I choose an alternate and I'm going to break your rule, I would actually look at agriculture because we need to address the farmers of this country also. 40% of the people dependent on agriculture and we need to help them.
Okay. Keshav?
Cyber security, I think biggest opportunity of the future. I would encourage anyone attending this discussion to go and take a look at Cyber Smart, which Lakshmi spoke about right at the beginning. WNS is offering to children in India. We have only 516 million people accessing the net today in India, of which 72 million are adolescents. Potential for us to add another 800 million is huge. It is also one of the biggest business opportunities for India.
Mahesh?
I think in building world-class private research universities, we don't have any in India at all. I think that's the way by which a country shows that we've transitioned from fully government-supported tertiary education to saying we can do this by ourselves.
Lakshmi?
I would invest in only future technologies, electric vehicles, telecommunication, satellite-based communications, etc.
Okay. To build a healthy startup ecosystem, if you look at the various phases of the startup cycle, from ideation to funding to scaling to monetizing to ease of merger and acquisitions, which segment we have to focus on in strengthening it? Chris?
So to me, mentoring and directing them to look at the right way to build a company is very, very important. And I'm going to illustrate this by saying, I strongly feel that we must actually endeavor to build a profitable company before scaling. Our model right now is build for scale, right? We should be a profitable company before scaling, so that if you fail, you are still a profitable company, so you don't close down the business. So mentoring is very important.
Ideation. Ideation, from my perspective, I think thanks to our education system, we have too many copycats. India has the potential to actually come up with completely new disruptive ideas we don't have to copy.
Okay. Professor?
I can't improve upon what Chris said. Exactly what Chris said. That's the need.
I see. Okay. Lakshmi?
Research-based new ideas. I'd like to see a vaccine come out of India.
Now, if one technology you have to pick, all the current technologies, from artificial intelligence, genomics, biotech, nano to 3D, whatever, which technology will make a maximum impact in solving our social problems? Chris, we'll start from you.
Very easy to
One
answer.
technology you have to pick.
AI and ML, because that's the horizontal that touches everything.
Okay. Keshav?
AI ML for me as well.
Oh, I see. Okay. Professor?
I think the same, and specifically looking at healthcare again, that's an area where it's not made the kind of headway for whatever reason, regulations, etc. But that's one space that's very promising.
Lakshmi?
I'll broaden it by saying data and data sciences.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And the last question I have a series of questions from the audience, which I'll take it up next. And the last question I have is, if the government were to grant one wish, make one reform, what would that reform be?
Throw out all the existing regulations and restart.
Restart. Okay. Keshav?
I think hand over healthcare completely to the private sector, including the government hospitals.
I think deregulate education seriously. I think lay out the broad framework of measuring outcomes, but let 40,000 colleges devise their own curriculum. I think we have to empower the grassroots in education in a big way.
Lakshmi?
Clip the wings of the bureaucrats. Send them home.
Okay. All right, fine. So now let me call some people from the audience to ask questions. Do we have Sriram Ravichandran?
Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and wonderful panelists. So I'm Sriram, founder of Models Housing. So we are an early stage startup working on transforming construction from a service into a DIY product, more or less like what has IKEA done for furnitures. And we developed this product during another disaster like Chennai floods. And like Professor Mahesh has told, this can be either seen as a threat or opportunity. So we understood that is an opportunity to build differently the way shelters are built, more or less like rapid shelter system. And I would also like to take a minute to thank the whole ecosystem of IIT Metro, starting from Nirman, which was then headed by Professor Mahesh, who helped us build a product, and we got incubated into IITM, got mentored by alumni like KK Raman and so on. So we have now built a business case, and which actually also questions our whole vision itself is a question right now. So model is, we are right now setting up micro hospitals, schools, Anganwadis and livelihood centers across the country with the help of state government. And the question being that we have seen telehealth and online education has created a huge impact on urban areas. And all these startups, from what we know, are catering to all the cities and towns even, which is roughly around 30% of the population. But whereas, as we know, as there is a saying which says that the strength of a chain depends on its weakest link, does digital penetration enter into the rural villages? Will telehealth and online education enter into rural areas? Will it replace Anganwadis, or is it going to be both digital education and physical education, or digital health and physical health? Is it going to be a combination of both? Is it going to be replacing the whole of infrastructure and just going to be only digital? So what is your take on that?
Shriram, be brief, please. We have many other individuals going to ask the questions.
Yeah. So the question being that, will telehealth and online education replace the whole infrastructure?
Clearly, it will not be overnight transformation. We need to provide access mechanisms to people in rural areas. So, we have discussed this during our talk in terms of bandwidth, end user devices, kiosks, computer literacy centers. So we need a set of mechanisms to provide 100% access to all the citizens of India, and I would even endeavor to say that we must actually make sure that every citizen of India has a smartphone or a tablet and an internet connection. That has to be part of our basic rights in the future.
Okay. And what is the rough timeline?
No, I think we should allow the next person to ask the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
Thank you so much, sir.
So, Meena Ganesh next.
Hi, this is Meena Ganesh here. Thank you for allowing me to ask a question here. A wonderful panel. I enjoyed listening to your comments. I'm an outside of hospital healthcare company, and during COVID, we were able to do some serious innovations to help manage COVID patients outside of a hospital and reduce the burden on the entire hospital system by managing home isolation of 25,000 patients. We saw huge amount of quick dynamic movement at the bureaucracy, at the government officials, and at the political parties, and technology adoption was very quick. How do we ensure that this remains in future? And how do we make sure it further penetrates into the really deserving and difficult classes who are struggling a lot? And specifically in healthcare, like Chris said, this is the time that healthcare needs to step up. How do we make this a sustainable and much more pervasive change?
Very pertinent question, and I must congratulate you for driving that model so successfully, because I think Delhi hospitals also delivered a similar kind of solution, and it has worked extremely well because the whole value chain came together, and at 5,000 rupees, you guys were actually able to monitor remotely and also add on some nursing care in terms of visits to a patient and things like that. The reality is, I think that whichever government has experienced this, and even the end patient who has experienced this, will definitely want this as a long-term model that will integrate into whatever services are already available. That is one. Second thing, I will also, if I was a betting man, I will say that some of these cab drivers that the traditional IT companies have used with work from home, that business has gone away for all of them. I actually think that this business will actually create new employment for all of those cab drivers, because you will have to send your teams to all of these houses to monitor it. So I actually think it's something to be built on, and it would be encouraged a lot, this model.
Sure. Thank you.
Chris, you wanted to comment on it?
No. That's the right answer.
Okay, fine. All right.
So this is from Karun Philippe. Although I agree with the concept of universal home loan, I would rather use tech to monitor at-risk home loan. Quote unquote, at risk means it's really a scholarship, but 10% of the salary will be paid after getting the job, up to a max of double of what was invested as scholarship. This shifts the responsibility to the trainer and the funder, who are more knowledgeable about what job skills are useful than a disadvantaged person. What do you think?
Okay, Professor
Mahesh?
Sure.
Sorry.
I think that's the philanthropy model. In fact, anybody that goes to any college in India today, certainly a government college, is not paying the true cost of their education. So whatever little they pay now, there is a certain pay forward clause that is embedded in the education contract and the degree granted. So 10% of the salary or 5%. In fact, I estimate it to be 2%. If everybody stepped up and gave back 2% of their net worth or earnings to their alma mater, everybody would rival the best in the world in India. So I think the idea is good, but there no regulation should help it. It's a mindset change that has to make this happen. And I think it's already happening. India is at a cusp with philanthropy in general. I think we will see this mindset change happen in a very short period of time.
Okay, thank you. Chris, you want to add something?
I want to end in a positive note. I strongly feel that if there is one country where technology is going to have a significant impact, it is India, because we have 1.3 billion people, we have a market, we have a society that needs to develop. We have to reinvent the models for the 21st century, which are sustainable, equitable, inclusive. We have the talent, this 4.5 million plus people who have worked with the best of the best in the world in technology. It's a talent pool which is second to only US. And that's the talent pool which is going to create startups, which is going to innovate. And then look at all our IITs and all the colleges that have research facilities, etc. So if you combine all these things together, we can actually reimagine every single industry. We can come up with solutions that are going to be, a radical or a disruption of what it's today. I'm going to differ with Lakshmi to some extent, in the sense that I feel our bureaucrats understand the challenges. It's the system that does not allow them to actually work more efficiently or work along with industry. And COVID has shown that they will all come together and find a solution and work in solving a societal problem. That sense of urgency and that sense of purpose, I think we must sustain. And I agree with Meena that our biggest challenge is what we have invented, that spirit of cooperation, the spirit of can-do attitude that we have come up with during the COVID scenario, all the way from feeding all the migrant workers to developing the best model to predict what needs to be done, the PPEs that we created, all kinds of things that we have done. I think we need to ensure that we take these forward. It must actually give us the confidence to actually relook at problems and solve problems differently.
Thank you. I think we only have 6 minutes left now. So what I'm going to do is just ask one question and ask each one of you to give your closing remarks along with that.
Sir, can we ask? There's one more question that's come up.
Okay, you go ahead.
Start with.
Yeah, if complete privatization is the answer to education, and looking at the US, which is the trend that's playing out in its extreme, the costs are unchecked and average student comes out with student loans. So the question is if there should not be a balance like in the Europe, and in Indian context, how do we educate millions of youth to leverage the demographic dividend?
So can I lend my thoughts to that? Yeah, I think certainly I don't advocate privatization of education. Oh, by the way, even today, 17.5 lakh engineering seats in India, only about 1.5 to 2 lakhs are in government's hands. So while we don't advocate it, that's what has actually happened. Okay, now many of these institutions started out as with a philanthropic outlook. They're not really a for-profit engineering college or a for-profit university. I think private universities are not the same as privatized universities. So you can think of a university that's run in a corporate with a corporate mindset versus a little more of a government mindset where there's an umbilical cord to the taxpayer. That's the only difference. Now, you're absolutely right. In the US, the gross enrollment ratio is 85% in tertiary education, but the gross graduation rate is only 40%. The reason is they are burdened with a loan that they drop out in the middle of their college and don't complete their education. They have to work to pay off the loan towards a degree that they didn't even earn. Okay, so this is certainly not what we want to emulate in India. I think what we have is good. We just need to enable a technology solution for some of the problems that that system encounters.
Thank you. I think we don't have much time, so I'm just going to. My question otherwise was that if you were to wear a Superman's or superhero's costume, what will the big bang project that you will undertake instead of taking all the incremental steps? So how do we disrupt that? Well, we don't have time for that. So maybe we just close now by last one minute for each one of you. So Professor, you can start. Then Keshav, sure. And followed by Chris. Yeah.
Sure. Actually, I would like Lakshmi to go first, if with his thoughts as well.
All right. Fair enough.
I think, I mean, this is a great conversation. The thing that is coming out is clearly everyone is talking about digital technology, bandwidth, and contextually more in the healthcare space. Primarily, I think because we are going through one such phase now with COVID, much of the attention has been on the healthcare area. Now, the one point that I'd like to make is the timing. The timing is very, very appropriate for new ventures, new initiatives, the current. Just give an example of Airbnb and Uber, one of the two most successful models. They came out during the time of recession. Post the recession, people wanted an extra buck, extra money. They said, okay, why don't I let out a room and earn some extra money. Likewise, drivers, they said, I'll do some extra work as a taxi driver and get some extra money. So the timing of recession created so many successful business models. I think the time of this pandemic also is going to create a number of new successful business models, which we will see in the years to come. But the primary thing that is going to drive them, that's going to make it successful, like in the past, is technology and communication.
I would just like to thank everybody now. I don't think we have time. Sorry, Professor.
Sure.
Only 1 minute left. So I had a great time moderating this session. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Keshav. Thank you, Lakshmi. And also I would like to thank the audience for joining it. Over to you, Vanita.
Thank you so much, Harish Bhai. Amazing moderation. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mehta, for this session. Thank you all for joining today. Our next session is on Saturday. Mr. Rajiv Sethi is going to be, it's going to be a lecture series by Mr. Rajiv Sethi. We hope to see you all back again. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keshav.
Bye, Vanita.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Good to see
Mahesh.
you again, Chris. Sure. Thank you, Vanita.